So you think you can beat me by outlawing my thoughts with your rogue politicians and the judges you bought? So you think you can mold me like I'm made out of clay? Oh, you want me to answer? Just got this to say. Take a look into this warrior's eyes. Tell me what you see. Take a look into this warrior's eyes. Oh, that still beats free.
Hello, I'm Paul Fromm. I'm the Midnight Man on Stormfront Radio. Catch me every night, midnight Eastern Time, for my nightly show, For Our People, and that's the European founding settler people of this great continent of ours. Well, there's a howl being heard right across this dominion, from coast to coast. Here's from the Halifax Chronicle Herald, Paul Schneiderwright. Watch out for the Thought Police, better known as the Canadian Human Rights Commission. Out in Calgary, similar commentary. The National Post, fire the censors. The Globe and Mail, shake that roll of policing ideas. And they conclude a lengthy editorial that appeared on February the 2nd. They conclude it by saying it's time to rein them in. That's the Canadian Human Rights Commission, before further damage is done to Canadians' right to free expression. These are just some of the prominent ones. The Catholic Bishop of Calgary, Alberta, called Human Rights Commissions Orwellian, and demanded that they get out of the censorship business. Catholic Insight, a conservative Catholic magazine, called for human rights commissions to get out of the censorship business. The Catholic Register, which is a kind of mushy, middle-of-the-road liberal Catholic weekly, called on the government to get human rights commissions out of the censorship business. Even leftish community weeklies like iMagazine in Toronto are echoing the same thing, that human rights commissions should not be censoring the printed media, which actually is on the internet, and that's a distinction a lot of people don't make. Well, what's happening? Well, finally, after 10 years of our work, there's an awareness across this land about the attack posed by human rights commissions to freedom of speech, particularly the Canadian Human Rights Commission, to freedom of speech on the internet. It's taken a long time. Mark Lemire of the Freedom Site and I of the Canadian Association for Free Expression have pumped out literally tens of thousands of emails and faxes over the past 10 years. On some of these human rights tribunal cases, we've had a daily report, a news report, because the mass media, more often than not, was not even there. Not even a single reporter in most cases. So the press cannot say they didn't know. You know, if they have eyes to see, if their computer turns on, if the fax machine isn't broken, they got this information. Why is there being such a blanket of silence until now? Well, as so often happens, people doing evil things, like trying to shut other people up, can never know quite when to stop. You know, censorship, I think, is like a narcotic. It just feels and tastes so good. And it's never enough just to have a little bit of it. Hey, you've silenced a couple of poor little people who couldn't even afford a lawyer. No victim has ever won an internet censorship case. They're always convicted. Well, easy to understand why. The whole kangaroo court is stacked against them. The member, or judge we might say, is specially chosen because he's biased for one side. The Canadian Human Rights Act, believe it or not, says that the tribunal members shall be chosen for having a special interest in and sensitivity to human rights. Now, you may say, well, that's everybody's rights. Not exactly. In the weird world of Canadian human rights legislation, there are two types of rights. There's group rights and individual rights. Now, a complainant is saying, I'm a member of a group, or actually I'm not even a member of a group, but my group, or this group rather, has been exposed to hatred or contempt. So if it's a privileged group, you know, race, religion, sex, sexual orientation, if it's a privileged group, it has the right, apparently, not to be criticized, not to be exposed to hatred. Well, that's a pretty extreme emotion. Or contempt. Well, contempt really is any criticism, anything negative said about the group. They have a right not to be exposed to contempt. So in other words, you can't criticize them. Now, the tribunal members are chosen because they have a sensitivity to group rights. The group rights are in conflict with the individual rights of the person posting on the internet. That person's right, for instance, to freedom of expression, freedom of belief, freedom of, or perhaps freedom of religion, maybe even freedom of the press. So the deck is completely stacked. Well, now that's what's coming out. What did they do? A group of radical Muslims went after Maclean's magazine for posting some months ago a chapter of a book by neoconservative Mark Steyn. And Mark Steyn's thesis is that radical Muslims are pouring into Europe. They're a cohesive community. They have very large families. Europeans are having small families, and that these radical Muslims will eventually take over and supplant the Christian Western folks in Europe. Now, you know, whether he's right or wrong, he has some impressive facts and so on. Well, these radical Muslims, instead of writing a rebuttal or perhaps setting up their own web page or challenging Mr. Steyn to a public debate, tried to shut him down, or rather tried to punish Maclean's magazine for putting this material up on the internet. This went to the Canadian Human Rights Commission, which at this point is investigating, but Mark Steyn has really gone to bat for himself. He's done the research, actually mostly using our research, and has come to the same conclusions. There is no defense. Maclean's will be convicted. There is no defense. Truth is not a defense. Intent is not a defense. Public discussion of an important matter is not a defense. All you have to do is say something negative about a privileged group, and you're convicted. Beyond that, of course, there's the track record. The Canadian Human Rights Tribunals have never acquitted a single victim in a free speech case. And furthermore, just in case you think you might have a chance because you've got a brilliant lawyer, forget about it, because the tribunal members are chosen for their bias against you. Oh yes, and the rules will change. The procedures will change any time during the trial. We have found, for instance, that we will be held to strict rules of evidence, we the defense, whereas the prosecution can get away with just about bringing in yesterday's newspaper as a piece of evidence. No, there is no fairness and there is no justice. But now, finally, the press is getting the message. And commentators right across Canada for the past 6 weeks have been hammering Richard Warman, chronic complainer, and the whole rotten Canadian Human Rights Commission system. This attack on freedom of speech. And there now is pressure being brought to bear on the government to change the legislation. Liberal member from Victoria, Keith Martin, has introduced a private member's bill, M446, which is calling on the government to rescind or repeal Section 13. That's the internet section, censorship section of the Canadian Human Rights Act. It'd be a good idea, if you're a Canadian, to write your member of Parliament, call him and tell him to back Keith Martin's private member's bill to get rid of internet censorship in Canada. I'm Paul Fromm, I'm the Midnight Man, and you can catch me every night on Stormfront Radio at www.stormfront.org.